Hey guys, so I just woke up and was connecting to God, and this message came through that I want to share with people who have experienced grief with losing someone, especially a parent in particular. So, something I've noticed among my clients and among my loved ones is that when one of our primary caregivers or both have been taken away from us, that there's a part of us that goes with them, right? Even though we can listen to like the quote unquote cliched advice or saying around like that, our past ones are still with us. And I truly believe in that, as cliche as it is. But sometimes we don't want to hear that in our time of grief because of how painful it is and because of the anger that comes with grief as well, right? So the reason I mean, you guys know I specialize in relationships and self-worth. And I want to specifically talk about how losing a parent or someone who is like a parent can impact our relationships deeply around how we feel about ourselves and how we are showing up in our relationship to others. Now, I want to preface this. What I'm about to say, everything is coming from love. And so if something comes off as, I don't even want to say harsh because I don't think that it's going to, but anything that I say is truly coming from love. And this is just based on my clinical experience and also what I've really observed just in life that I'm witnessing among others who are passing through grief. So when we lose a parent and we are living in this world without them, what happens is that there is a sense of our security that goes along with it. Okay, so we almost lose that sense of security, okay? But also a sense of belonging. And why a sense of belonging? A sense of belonging because, especially if we're talking about biological parents, okay? This person, their energy, their literal cells and eggs have brought you into this realm, have brought you into this earth, and have been with you up until they haven't, right? And this is like regardless if you have a healthy or unhealthy relationship with this parent. But of course, you're going to feel like a part of you is gone because literally a physical part of you is gone. You are made up from a part of this human being. You have not only physical ties, biological ties, DNA ties, but you have these energetic ties to them as well. Right? And so if we look at losing a father or father figure, our fathers represent protection, providing, safety. Okay? And when you've grown up with that and then all of a sudden it has been taken away from you, no matter what age you are, whether you've lost them at a young age or you lost them later on in life, it doesn't matter. You're still their child. You're still someone that came from them. And you will always be their child, always, no matter what age you are. So if you think about that, and we're just going to focus on the father for this moment, okay? So if you think about that and feeling like that sense of safety, that sense of protection, that sense of providing has been stripped from you, okay, that primary, like these are the people, this is the person who was supposed to provide this to you primarily growing up, right? Whether you received that fully or not, but that's just how you relate to them, regardless of your relationship with them, right? So when that is stripped of you, there is something that happens on like a neurological level, an energetic level, and just on a human level, right? That sometimes it can feel really hard to trust again in the world. It can feel like almost like the world is against you because this has been taken away from you. Okay, and you start to see relationships very differently, especially if you are a woman in a heterosexual relationship. It's most likely you might start to, especially in the beginning phases of grief, like you might notice that your relationship changes with your partner because you might start to see males differently. And like, this is not your fault and like, you're not wrong for this, right? But this is kind of just what happens. And at the same time, you get to choose how you're going to navigate through this. So like, I know so many people who kind of went through a lot of rough times in the beginning of their grief process with their partner, and they've worked through it, and they've had really great partners who were compassionate, understanding, and were able to hold safety, security, and like understanding and compassion for them through this, right? But also too, they had to work through the shadow parts of that grief within themselves and with their partners and what was coming up for them in their relationships, right? So, again, you're not wrong for the way that you're processing your grief at all. You need to process it in whatever way that comes up for you. And that might be going through the darkness. It really might bring up shit in your relationship. And trust that shit is actually meant to come up, because the masculine really does reflect a lot to us back to us feminine. And when we go through grief, so much shit gets brought up that, of course, is connected to the actual situation and what's actually happening. But there's so many more layers to grief than we can actually comprehend, than we can actually see at a surface level, right? And so you might even discover different parts of yourself through your grief process. And it might be different shadow parts of yourself. It might be different light parts of yourself, right? And hey, I'm never going to tell you what to do with your grief. You got to figure that out for yourself. That's your own pathway. I'm just trying to help you understand, why you might even feel different after your grief, after losing, again, a masculine figure in your life, most likely your father. Now let's talk about the mother side of this, okay, our feminine side. So if you've lost your mom or someone who was like a motherly figure, so the mothers represent nurturing. They also represent safety. They represent, honestly, a relationship to God and Source. They represent connection, acceptance, and compassion. Okay? And so when we lose our mothers, I think this could be one of the deepest wounds that we could ever feel. When I say lose our mothers, I am talking about them passing over to the other side. Okay? we're going to go into a whole other episode around estranged mothers and daughters and sons, and yeah, because that's just a whole other episode. Anyway, but so yeah, like when you lose your mom, that sense of nurturing that you may have gotten from her, or may not, depending on your relationship with her, not having that, it can be like, again, like it could feel like you've lost like your sense of belonging in this world. You literally grew in this person's womb. Having a mother, like that is one of the most deepest connections. Again, whether you are connected to her or not, I know some people are not in contact with their mom. And again, like you literally were attached by a cord, a physical cord, to her for more than 9 months, right? And so your sense of connection, okay, that might change. Your sense of belonging, that might change. It can be, like, especially if you've had a healthy relationship with your mother or an okay relationship, not having in this 3D realm, in this actual earth world that we're living in, not having that love, not being able to speak to this person again in this 3D realm, can really shift how we show up in the world, how we show up in our relationships. Now, with this specific loss, when it comes to losing moms, again, your relationship, if you're in one, or your relationship to the feminine, it might bring up some darkness. It might bring up some change. You might notice that you get triggered by other women. You might notice that, like, you know, maybe you see another mom and daughter, and that brings something up for you, right? And in regards to your romantic relationships, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, you know, like, this can bring up your ability to receive. Like, can you receive that nurturing and that caretaking from your partner as you go through this grief process? Can you receive it in yourself too? Right? So again, we really want to be patient with our grief process. And especially at the beginning, like, you have to just let yourself feel it. You gotta let yourself be a fucking wreck. You don't have to have it together at all. You really don't. And like, even if you're not at the beginning of your grief process, like, grief is just so there's no timeline for it. You could be 10 years down the line and it could still feel like it happened fucking yesterday, especially when it comes to parents, you know? And so give yourself grace and patience. Allow yourself to go through that. And like, when you've given yourself the space to actually feel what feels like the fucking crazy or the grandiose emotions that come up, because they will, can you take time after that to actually reflect on, okay, coach yourself and ask yourself, well, what was actually, like, what's coming up for me around this grief process, and how is it interconnected to my relationship to self, my relationship to God, the divine source, whatever you believe in, and my romantic relationship. Because all of these things are so interconnected, okay? Our relationship with our parents, whether they're here or not, impacts our relationship with our partner. Our relationship with our partner impacts our relationship with our children. Our relationship with ourselves impacts our relationship with our children. Our relationship with our parents impacts our relationship with our children, our partner. Do you see how it's all interconnected? And let's bring it back to God, to Source. The way we feel in our relationship with ourselves and with others is a direct reflection as well of our connection to our higher power. So, what I want to leave you with is some questions to ask yourself. So one was how, like, whatever's coming up for myself right now, how is this in relation to, like, what's coming up for me? Like, even if it's darkness, even if it's like shadow work that's coming up, what's coming up, and how can I move through it to process it, to move it out of my system, out of my body? And when we can do that, when we can allow ourselves to feel, like really feel it and not hold back, not suppress. So if you feel like you need to scream, you need to cry, you need to be fucking angry, you do that. You fucking just do it, no matter how crazy you feel, okay? And then you reflect, wow, okay, those are some big emotions that came up. Those were some big emotions that came up. What's underneath that? So let's take anger. Okay, so I feel angry and I just had like a rage, a sacred rage that just came up. Okay, so what's underneath that anger? And maybe it's like, I just feel fucking sad. I feel out of control. I feel like a piece of me is missing that I can never get back. Okay, and then you can ask yourself, okay, that's so valid. And just sit with that, and just sit with that emotion underneath the rage and the anger. Okay. And then you communicate to that part of you and you say, I noticed that you said that there was a piece of you that feels like you'll never get back, or a piece of you that's missing. So how can we tend to that piece that feels missing? How can we tend to the gap within your body, within yourself, within your heart that feels like it's missing? How can we pour into that? And really, a lot of the times what it comes down to is like devotion. Devotion to pouring into yourself of like, okay, what do I need in my moments of grief to be okay? And if this resonates with you, this piece that feels like it's missing, like what are devotional things that you can do towards honoring your past loved one? Now, this is something that helps me so deeply, and I haven't lost a parent. However, there are pieces of myself that I've like definitely lost and felt like I haven't been the same, and I don't want to be the same after this, right? And what's helped me is the devotional piece around having these intentional practices. So it could be as simple as like lighting a candle in honor of your past loved one. You know, I asked someone the other day who lost their mom. I think it was a year ago. And I could tell he was really sad. I could see it. I can read people, and I just know what's kind of happening for people without them having to put it into words for me. That's one of my gifts, actually. And you know, I kind of took the initiative to ask him how he was feeling, ask him what was going on with him. And I explained all of this, like what I'm telling you, around how like our sense of security, our sense of belonging in the world, our sense of connection can like really shift and change, or it can vanish sometimes and feel like it's not there. And, he was in full agreement. He's like, yeah, 100%. Like, that's exactly how I feel. And I had asked him, like, do you have rituals that you do in devotion to her? Or do you like sit down and like, have you tried to connect to her? And he just looked at me with like a blank stare. He's like, I just don't know how to do that. I was like, okay, that's okay. Like, it doesn't mean you're not capable of it. It just means that, you just have to practice it. That's it. And so what I explained to him was to take some time every day. It doesn't have to be long. It can be 10 minutes. And, maybe you light a candle, you sit in silence, or maybe you put on like their favorite music. Like, think of things that remind you of them. And maybe you make an altar for them, a special altar for them, where you can have their picture, a candle, and you can put offerings there for them. You can even like put a little plate of food out for them, or flowers or something like that. And just sit with them, sit with their soul. And before you do that, you can I like to do this just because you want to be careful with like what you're tapping into, but just call your angels forward to protect you. I like to use Archangel Michael and Saint Germain for protection. And you always want to just ask that you're sitting with a soul of the highest and greatest good for you, and for them who have passed on, because there can be some darkness out there, right? You want to be careful. But majority of the time, you'll be able to communicate with them in ways that you couldn't as a human being. So our main communication is like verbal communication, right? And maybe you can use that. So like, you're sitting with their favorite music, this altar, whatever it is you choose. Get creative and listen to your heart when you are doing these rituals around how you feel you want to connect with them. And ask them to come forward. Ask them to be with you. And then you sit, close your eyes, place your hand to your heart, deepen your breathing. And maybe you feel them. Maybe it's literally a feeling sensation of like, I can feel them here with me. Or maybe you hear their voice. Or maybe you hear their whisper. Or maybe as you're closing your eyes, you start to see symbols or visions of them. And maybe they're not speaking to you verbally, but maybe they're showing you images. Maybe they're showing you memories. Maybe they're showing you the future too. And you just know that that's them communicating with you and showing you. Okay, maybe you smell them. Okay. Or maybe there's a certain taste that all of a sudden appears on your tongue and it's like, oh my gosh, it's their favorite food, or it's a dish that they used to cook, right? There's so many different ways that you can connect to your past loved one. And at first it might feel frustrating depending on where you are at in your grief process, right? Sometimes when it's really fresh, it can feel triggering. It can feel frustrating if you feel like, oh my God, I can't connect with them. I can't, like it's not working. And that might even bring about like other things that come up for you of like, oh my God, are they okay? Like, where are they? I think that's a huge question that comes up when it comes to grief of like, where have they gone? Where are they? Are they okay? Are they in peace, right? And so you want to be patient with this process, this ritualistic process, and the process of staying connected to them. these are just simple things that you can do. And again, you don't have to do it for like hours on end for the days. You can just devote 10 minutes to sitting with yourself, sitting with your heart, sitting with your angels, with God, and connecting to that person that you lost. And I can guarantee you that this is going to help you heal in your grief process. It is, yes, it may not be the same as them obviously being here physically on earth. Like, as human beings, we require touch, like physical touch. And although you can feel them, it's just different on like if we look at it at like a biological level, and like it is different, right? But you do have the power and the connection within you to move through this grief process on your own, but also with them, right? The people who have passed on can be, okay, majority of the times, if it's someone we have a close relationship with, like a parent. And even if we didn't, like, when souls pass over, and like majority of the time, okay, not with all souls, but like when souls pass over, they become light. Like, they are light, and they've always been light on this earth. They've just gone through the human experience. And because like sometimes, I mean, some of our parents have like really hurt us as well too, right? But like when they go over to the other side, they connect back to like the lessons that they learned on earth, and they have their own angels and spirit guides who are with them to kind of like reflect back on and discuss like, okay, like this is what you did on earth, and this is what happened, and what did you learn, and like this is a part of like the soul evolving process, right? And so this is another way to think about it, is like, although it can be really painful for souls, for like people to pass on, is that their soul has completed their purpose here on this earth, and now they're ready to go into their next level of ascension as a soul, right? And so this is actually in their highest and greatest good for their soul. And we want the best for the people that we love, right? And so that can be a comforting thought for you, or it can be an irritating thought for you, depending on where you're at in your process, and where, whatever that is, like, that's okay. But yeah, like I know that our past loved ones can be our greatest leaders if we practice the devotional part to ourselves, to them, to our higher power, and if we are kind of open to receiving that guidance from them. And a lot of it is just like talking to them, and talking to them can be in the ways that I kind of explained to you. It can be through rituals, it can be even through letter writing as well too. It really can be. Like, writing is so powerful. And so maybe there's things you need help on, or answers or questions that are unanswered, or you need just guidance around something that's happening in your life too, and you just wish you had that person to ask them what to do, and the guidance that they would give you, or their essence that just like made you feel safe, right? And so writing them a letter, and then asking to be shown signs or the answers that are the highest and best good for you in ways that you're going to understand. So maybe it's through a sign, maybe it's through a song, maybe it's through another person. Like, maybe you received that message through another person, but that message was from, your mom or your dad who've passed on, right? So I've given you some really beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things that you can do to help yourself through your grief process that'll bring, more comfort to you and more connection, not only to your spirituality, but to the one that you're missing. I can only imagine how hard this is for you. And everyone's grief is so different and brings up different things. And again, like I said, there's no timeline on your grief. And it comes in waves. Some days it's worse than others. Some days it can just feel like it was yesterday or the day of when that person left you. But take it moment by moment and honor those waves too. They hold so much sacredness and so much significance. And your emotions just deserve to be honored. They deserve to be honored and alchemized. So, my love, I'm sending you deep healing, deep love, deep anything that you need through your grief process. And I want to invite you to send me a message around how you're feeling after listening to this episode. And I want to invite you to explore an initial consult call with me where I can really help you to guide you through your grief process and help you connect to deepening your spirituality and strengthening those senses. So we have our regular human senses, but we also have what we call our clairsenses, right? Our clairsenses, which help us to connect to realms beyond this earth, which is kind of what I kind of touched on in regards to connecting with your past one in this episode. Yeah, let's dive deep into it together, because I want to hear your story. I want to hear what's happening for you specifically. And you also just deserve to be held in your grief process and your sacredness of these emotions that come up, because like I said, underneath them there's deeper things, right? And grief is just it's kind of just like the poke to, when you have a balloon, I'm just envisioning this balloon, it's blowing up, it's about to explode, and then it hits something, or there's a needle that you poke in it, and underneath it, it's all that air that needs to be released. And what's in that air that needs to be released. Okay, and underneath the grief, it could be, again, the sadness, the rage, the anger, the loneliness, the disconnectedness. So, I want to hear what's happening for you in your grief process. So, hit me up on Insta, send me a DM, and let's do this together, my love. I cannot wait to witness you, hold you, and really just be someone that you can come to without any masks on, undone, in your unbecoming as you process everything that's happening in your heart. All right, my love, have a beautiful rest of your day, rest of your evening. Whenever you're listening to this, take really good care.